Great. And for the folks that have joined, and for those of you that are not in the club, this is an education event with the Illini Great Dane Club. And Jeff has talked with some of our members as he was explaining at a recent event that happened. That was a dog show. And then also they had Fast Cat type of event that Jeff will talk about. Just as an introduction of who is speaking tonight, Jeff joins us from Fast and Fun Dogs. It's a lure operation service provider. And also, Morgan Dart should join us later. They are an AKC field director for the coursing ability test and FastCat. And here, so basically tonight we have kind of really, you know, Jeff, I hope you agree, but like experts in the field, people that are actively doing this dog sport here to share with us. And I'm really excited to not only share with the Illini Great Dane Club, but also people in the general interest in dogs. So with that, I don't have a further introduction. If you'd like to kind of go into the presentation, I'm sure lots of us will have questions as well.
Yep. No, no, thanks, Dustin. And for those that weren't on right at the beginning, Morgan is going to be joining. She had a conflict, was running just a little bit late. Um, so she'll be able to chime in when she comes in, as well as we want to leave enough time for questions and answers. Definitely at the end, but even if there's something that you want to chime in along the way, we'll kind of go through. So again, as way of background, I'm with Fast and Fun Dogs, and we have been, well, I'll say personally myself, I've been doing this for probably about 7-8 years. And Don Adams, who I work with, was one of the originators, of the Fast Cat sport. He's been in lure coursing a lot longer. And so we've really feel we've kind of helped mature the sport over time, and really want to just give a good introduction, to those that have not seen it, and and why, hopefully get across in terms of why we think it's been extremely popular, and so forth. So anyway, with that. Let's go on. So what we want to do is cover high level, cover a history, of FastCat, just a little bit of background, so you have an idea where it came from, and so forth. Really kind of talk to clubs in terms of how do you organize a FastCat event. What do you have to plan for? Really cover the basic rules. I'm not going to go into all the detail, but at least give you a good overview of the sport. And then, I'm addressing, I've included a lot of frequently asked questions, but, really want to spend a lot of time for just questions, that come up that we may not have been able to address. So where did it come from? It really started with lure coursing. And if you go back with lure coursing in the early 70s, you had some sighthound owners, that they were looking for an alternative to chasing jackrabbits in open fields, and risking harm of them running into barbed wires. So they kind of developed lure coursing, and it was a great way just to have a competitive approach with their dogs, and let they have the dogs get out there and just have fun with what they naturally do. And in this case, it was starting primarily just with sighthounds. By the early 90s, AKC started offering lure coursing events and titles. And what they, in lure coursing, what happens is that the hounds run, in braces or trios, over a zigzag course, and they're judged on different criteria, like speed, ability, or agility, and so forth. And you basically, get your points based on how you performed on the field. Let's just put it that way. Um, what what we what AKC started finding, or some of the enthusiasts started finding, is that after the events were over, clubs would have practice runs. And what was common was for non-sighthound owners to then run their dogs, even if the event was limited to sighthounds. So that kind of led to what is now called CAT, which is the coursing ability test. And it was introduced, in 2011 and so forth, as kind of like a pass fail for all breeds. Small dogs that run 300 yards, large dogs that run 600, and either you pass the test, or you had to try again. While CAT was very popular, it had shortcomings. Because you're now working with a large run, if it you need to have it fenced, so the 600 yards needed to be fenced, and it also generally took a long time to run the dogs, because you would have dogs that may just decide to quit along the run, and then the owners would have to go out and get them, or others that did not want to get caught. So the event would pretty much stop while you're trying to get one dog out and get the next dog in. So you could run maybe 60, 100 dogs in a CAT trial. That's when the idea came up is, well, why don't we just look at just a sprint, and led to the concept of fast CAT. So it's just a fast version of the coursing ability test, and started in 2016. Again, it's just going to be a 100-yard dash with it timed. Would be open to all breeds, and to kind of level the playing field the best they could, I said, well, let's give size-based handicaps, which we'll talk about more. The sport really kind of took off, from the early beginnings back then, and it's now AKC's third largest or third most popular sport. And again, part of the reason is just because you will find dogs that really love it, and others like, hey, I just want to be out there. I don't have to be the fastest dog, but I still like running, and it gives them a nice release. And as long as, especially if they are prey driven, it really can be a fun time for both the owner, the exhibitor, and the dog. So, again, what kind of, why was there such growth and popularity? Well, again, open to all breeds, including mixed breeds or all Americans. That then kind of led to the other benefit is, because now you are introducing owners of all breed or all American dogs. They kind of see what the other breeds do as well. So it's kind of like an introduction, to purpose-bred breeds. It also it attracts people that have absolutely no interest in dog shows. They're not in there for conformation. But it's a great release. I mean, one of the things that we found, we have events that are located near dog parks, and people will be going to the dog park. They'll see this, and they really want to know, what is this? What's this fast cat thing all about? And soon enough, they're also coming and entering and running their dogs, because they want to see what it entails. Um, it, quite frankly, doesn't require a great deal of training, especially if your dog is prey driven, or investment of time. So it's one of those things that you could be, like we mentioned, this past weekend we were with an all breed show. Um, you could be at an all breed show and as released from confirmation, now go out and run a fast cat. Um, uh, and that's one of the things we tend to encourage is kind of pairing up with other events and activities. Um, you'll find real quick that dogs that love the game really love the game, and once they figure it out, they really get fired up about being able to just get out there and chase a piece of plastic. Um, and even those that don't want to necessarily chase the lure, they really like finding their people at the end of a run. So, again, it's we really feel those are the things we've seen that have really contributed to the popularity. So, what does it mean to to the clubs? Well, one thing is that you really don't have to be a big club to hold a fast cat event. I mean, you do need um, volunteers. I mean, the more volunteers you have, the more I'll say profitable it is. But you can run it with if it's a good venue, and you promote it, um, uh, you can do very successful, even with a smaller club. And I found in a lot of cases that you don't necessarily have to have club members, being part of volunteering. It can be, other family members that really, again, don't really have any interest in showing dogs, but they like an outdoor sport, and they enjoy dogs. So um, ultimately, if the events are well run, which is our goal, safe and run it well, um, they are also money makers, and that's part of the reason why the clubs have embraced them. To to really promote and do well with them. So let's just spend a little time on talking through, the organization. Like anything else, if you're going to be successful, you need thorough planning, and attention to detail. I mean, the first few times through it can be a little rough, because everybody's learning, which is why it really pays to have others that have been through this before. And so I want to spend a little time in terms of, what you need and how to organize. So, in terms of the planning, first you've got to find some dates. And the keys here are the events need to be at least 100 miles from other fast cat events, uh, which is, aligns with a lot of the other AKC restrictions or limitations on events. Um, and unless a club is going to run the lure operation themselves, then you need a lure operation service provider. And part of the reason why I call that out is, you may have open dates, um, but there's a limited number of experienced service providers, so you have to find out whether or not they're going to be available. And obviously, like any other partnership, it's kind of like, hey, is this going to work well, with our club and what we need, what you provide. So that's why I always just say, just find some dates, find and align with the service provider if you're going to do that, and then kind of get that booked, as early as you can. So, I know in this case, we're already kind of lined up for next year with the Illini Great Dane Club.
Sure. Can I jump in with a couple points of clarification? So
Yes, absolutely.
great. And so for the 100 miles, that's the 100 miles within the day of that event. So if you're doing it on this Friday within 100 miles, there can't be another Fast Cat event, official Fast Cat event within on that day.
Correct. And that has to be as the crow flies.
Okay.
So straight line.
Got it. And then also, it's a great way for people of all different breeds to get involved. I think you said earlier that they were done next to like dog parks. So at one point, so that kind of can get attention, right, from just anybody, just that's spectators. And then also, do they have to be, they don't have to be purebreds, to my understanding, right? They need to be registered some way with the AKC to get these AKC official sports. But could you go a little bit more into detail of that?
Yep, correct. And I'll address that one back. So answer your question, yes. They don't have to be purebreds. They just have to be registered. And there's several different programs to that they can be registered under. So we'll circle back on that one, Dustin.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Um, finding the provider, finding the venue and the date, the key start. The other thing that we really, to be successful, is like anything else, event promotion. And you have to look for things that will really kind of help stand out and get the word out. So we'll talk a little bit more about like for instance, this weekend with Belvedere, it was the Kishwaukee Kennel Club, and the one thing that they've really done to kind of, let's say, up their game on promotion wise is new title ribbons. They and we'll talk a little bit more about it, but there's a lot, especially in the Midwest, that competition is also for really nice ribbons, unique ribbons. As the dogs kind of go through the titles and so forth. But there's other ways to do that as well. Again, that's why the visibility to dog park, just getting the word out there, combining with things like dock diving, or other events, really just kind of help with that cross promotion. And then the other key piece is just lining up the volunteers, coordinating the volunteers. Again, like anything else, the more times you do it, the easier it gets because everybody starts understanding. And that's partly what I wanted to accomplish here, was to at least give you a good idea in terms of what it takes. It's going to be new to to a lot of people, but we have different types of roles that can be handled with all different types of experience and abilities and so forth. So it's just really trying to get that out there, get an understanding, and then kind of coordinating like an in-air event, getting the volunteers lined up. We'll talk just a little bit about the venue. I'll say the critical part on the venue is just having enough space, that the run has to be fenced, and it's 20 feet, in our case 20 feet wide, but then we aim for at least 140 yards to 180 yards. And talk about that in terms of how we would lay it out. But just a nice, essentially flat, straight, run, that then exhibitors can be able to access, with nearby parking, and access. Um, again, when we go through that, we try to, once you find a good venue, then it's really, it's the getting known for being there, and the fact that it's a good place. Again, so I'll only because it's recent, I'll reference Belvedere. It's a nice spot that they've hit. It's right outside, the main fairgrounds, but it is a slightly downward slope. The groundskeeper there prides himself on how good the course is. I'll say, both free of any type of holes or such, but also can cut a very short grass. Just looks like it's a very nice track. And those things, especially to more of the competitive exhibitors, they remember that, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, that was a nice one. I can get some good times, and we're going to plan on being there again next year, for example. As I'm moving on. All right, so we're going to spend a little time on the staffing and the roles. So key position right off the bat is the event chair. They're the ones that are really organizing. They ultimately have to approve the course, and the operation. If somebody is the chair for the first time, then it just matters that they're going to have to kind of, if they work with some experienced, either service provider or a secretary, we guide them through all that. But they're the ones that ultimately are kind of responsible for running the event. They will also chair the event committee. Now, the event committee is comprised of at least 5 club members, 3 of which should be present during the event. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be, right there at the event, but they have to be available that, in the case that there's any type of questions, or any type of, let's say issues or such that come up, it's the responsibility of the event chair and the event field committee, to be able to determine, what needs, how you're going to proceed and so forth. So normally, quite frankly, what we say is we just need to have them, named and have them available. I've run, I can't even count how many events. Um, Quite frankly, there's only a couple times that we've actually had to have a event committee or field committee, engaged. But you need to have them at least identified, in the premium and, and application and so forth. The secretary, either called the event secretary or the trial secretary, that's the one that's responsible for managing all the entries. They'll go ahead and deliver. They'll create the run orders, and then they will report, the results to AKC. It's a role that clubs can take on, and we encourage clubs to take on. But I would also say that until you get some experience, you really need a mentor to kind of lead through this process, because it's like any other event. You really need to have some coaching guidance to get through it, at least initially. But ultimately, we really kind of encourage clubs to be able to kind of take over the secretarial roles as well. And once you know the process, there's also online systems that you can leverage to, to perform some of those secretarial work. Moving on, check-in and inspection. That really needs to be two club members. They don't necessarily always, these should be two club members. And what they're doing is just really kind of checking the dogs they're reporting in. They're for females, they're looking for, or if you're in season, then you will be excused, from the trial, and then refund issue with it. But they're also just checking, for lameness and whether or not the dog is fit to run, and that becomes a judgment call. There are some times when, an inspection committee may question, and then that has to get, discussed with the event chair, and the field committee if necessary. It's more the exception, than the rule. But all dogs before they run and before each run need to be inspected. They'll also normally inspection will also take in day of entries, which we really encourage. Is to take in day of entries as opposed to all just being pre-entered. Paddock master is the next role, and what they do is once the dogs have been inspected, now they just arrange the order of the runs, and pretty much set them up for their run, make sure that there's a catcher, at the end of the run, and then they will then announce the dog on the line, when the dog, is entering the run. Hunt master is at the top of the run, and so they'll make sure that the lure is positioned, that the dog, is now in the right position for the start. Also confirm that the lure operator is ready, as well as the catcher is out down there to catch, and then we'll signal the lure operator to start the run. Positioned on the run is a timer, and ribbon clerk. That can be two people or it can be one person. But basically, that role will operate the timing equipment. It's electronic timing equipment, the same as that is used in agility, for the most part. They will record the times, both for the secretary to report, as well as record it on qualifying ribbons, which are given to the exhibitor. The lure operator, is basically, they're out there to make sure that we're going to have a safe run. They're taking the signals from the hunt master, and is really kind of working to try to have a successful, safe, and fast run. And try to get as much as they can out of the dogs. Releasers. This is one role that we kind of remind exhibitors that this really is a team sport. You need to release a dog and catch a dog. So if you're not able to bring somebody to release for you, then a lot of times, the clubs have to try to provide releasers, or others who will just be able to hold or release dogs while the owner goes to catch. And we'll talk a little bit more about that one, Again, it's just really trying to make it as efficient as possible. As we're kind of going through these trials. Some of the other, and then I'll say these are optional. Depending on the event and so forth, we'll have a gate monitor, both at the entry at the top, who will really kind of assist making sure that the dogs are being let in when it's safe, as well as at the bottom, making sure that the dogs are helping being caught, and then kind of removing, and that's more from the standpoint of just getting, let's say, a really smooth flow, because when you have an operation, a routine that's going really well, I'll normally schedule with our operations, about 40 runs an hour. But there are times when we can do 60 runs an hour, which is one a minute. But that only happens when everybody's just kind of working everything through, and you're getting exhibitors through the process as efficiently and safely as possible. And the last role, just kind of layout, is a lure return operator, and that's in the case of if a drag line is using. There's two different types of fast cat lure operations. One is a drag line, where you only have the lure moving in the field, and you don't have the dog is not going to be running on a moving line, because they'll be chasing a bag that is ahead of them, or a continuous loop, which the dog will be running in the run, but the line that they're running on also is in the line. Both are, those are the two types of systems that are used out there. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. But in the case with, if we're using a drag, then we always have a lure operator. I'm sorry, a lure return operator. I know I had a lot of titles there. Do you want to pause just for a second on this one if there's any questions?
I had a quick question on the Huntmaster versus. So I've seen this, but I've been a person that releases the dog. But on the Huntmaster, positions lure, ensures readiness, signal start. That's not someone that can be a releaser. Is the Huntmaster at the end of the line, the run, or the beginning of the run?
So the Huntmaster is at the beginning.
Physically, okay.
Yep, and this is, and that's actually a good question, because depending on on the staffing, you can run with a lot less than all these roles. You just have to wear multiple hats. So a Hunt Master can also paddock master and also release.
Okay.
Now there's challenges to that, obviously. I mean, you're going to slow down.
Sure.
And normally, I would say that if you're a hunt master, you don't want to have to. You'll be challenged with releasing difficult dogs. Let's just put it that way, because you're going to have to somehow signal to the lure operator that I'm ready. But it can be done as well. But those are the three roles that are right at the top of the run. All right, so I'll just kind of go through, some of the other things that to be planned for is just like any event, just kind of plan for for the worst case, if you will. So in the premiums, we always have directions to the nearest vet. Make sure that that if there is an incident, that people know how to go, as well as, just be able to apply the basic, first aid. Um, we, Fast Cat, depending on I mean, they're all things, I'll say, injuries do happen, not often, but you can get dogs that are very amped up, and it's infrequent, uh, you know, but it does happen, or you can have people just get injured just because they're out in the field, like falling off a golf cart, so those are the things you just kind of have to plan for and go through. Um, Weather, you need to monitor, and make sure that people are prepared for the conditions. So in the summer, we really encourage making sure that there's cooling stations or kiddie pools for the dogs. If it's getting to be colder weather, making sure, or even in the regular, that exhibitors are exercising their dogs to warm up, beforehand. Um, then the other safety thing, and this is kind of goes back to this whole thing with releasers, is we really try to remind the exhibitors to provide instructions to handlers or releasers. If a dog is hard to handle, make sure that that's well known, and you've got the right person that you're now asking to release your dog. Um, if there's special instructions about how you want to have your dog released, I want to hold them, want them to be held back for a longer lead out. Well, then get that, have that communicated, or if you're using a special type of, um, you know, uh, release, speed release and so forth, just make sure that that's, well communicated. So, people have we have successful runs. All right, let's just go with some of the basic rules. Um, in terms of who can run, basically any dog, that's over a year old, and is fit, and not exhibiting, lameness. And like I said before, females, not in season. Um, to answer the other question, there's three different ways of tracking or reporting, with AKC. One would be just the standard AKC registration number. The next would be, the PAL or ILP number, which would be for purebreds that do not have an AKC registration. And then thirdly, back to the whole thing with, the All American, or mixed breed, is just get an AKC Canine Partners, number, and then, that would be used to track, and you're able to, title your dog, with any one of those. Um, Also, junior exhibitors can earn points toward their titles. So we kind of encourage that as well. And I kind of mentioned before, that there is a handicap system, which is based on height. So on the entry, we always, make sure that we're at least capturing what the height range is. If it's under 12, if it's between 12 and 18 inches or over 18 inches, then the handicaps, are different for each one of those. And if there's any question, on the size of a dog, then that would be something that inspection, could measure, with wickets, just to confirm. So again, what we're trying to do is to lay out, a course that kind of simulates the chase. So at the top, there is a 10-foot start box, and the dog just has to be in the start box. That could mean just that their front paws, are in the box, and the rest of it is behind the box. Um, uh, then it goes into 100-yard run, which is timed with the electronic timers, um, and completed with at least a 30-yard run out. We always plan for at least 50-yard run out, if not longer, because while most dogs do not need that run out, that much of a area to stop, um, we want to make sure that we're accommodating, especially greyhounds, that take longer to get up to speed and longer to slow down. Um, we electronic timing needs to be used, because this is a time sport, and we measure to the thousandths of a second, even though it's reported to the hundredths of a second, but we really want to make sure that that the times that are recorded are accurate. um,
Is that light based, or how does it trip? I'm sorry, I'm just for.
No, no, that's okay. No, it's a good question. Yes, it is light poles, and it really, for the most part, is very similar, if not the same, as the agility timing poles, timing equipment.
Hmm.
Just that it's going to be outdoor. They can be fidgety at times, depending on position of the how it's positioned. But yes, it's the light bars. It's the farm tech equipment that you use for agility. Um, so scoring, basically, points are accumulated based on miles per hour, and then, as I kind of said, based on the height, you can also get a handicap. So the original intent was that hey, it's going to take more time for a dog that has short legs than long legs. So we'll try to kind of balance that out, because we want to at least give all the breeds a little bit more of a handicap. There's debates in terms of should that be done by height or should it be done by breed. But right now the points are based on height, and the smaller you are, the faster you can accumulate points. But at the same time, you're also handicapped with you're only as fast as your legs can carry down the 100 yards. Um, the As you then start working up toward your titles, it's based on a lifetime cumulative points. So, 150 points is what's needed for the first level, which is BCAT. And, dogs, and again, depending on the breed and how they run into it, they can generally get to that level in 6 to 8, runs. You know, unless you can go a lot faster if you have a handicap, and you can go slower if you don't get to 20 miles an hour. Um, and then AKC also, because it's all recorded and so forth, will publish the top 20 fastest dogs, both by year as well as lifetime, and by breed. And then the top 5, for each breed are then invited to the annual invitational run by AKC. Which I've had the privilege of either hunt mastering or lure operating the last 4 years, and Morgan has had the privilege of being the secretary for the past 4 years. So let's kind of go into some of the questions that have come up. Just some of the basics, how to get started. First off, a club has to be licensed, to hold a Fast Cat event. And then, like I said, find dates, and then just like any other AKC event, just get approvals, to hold the event. Really encourage those that are new to the sport to attend, Fast Cat events, and even, kind of, if they're not exhibiting, even just kind of offer to help out, with some of the other clubs. I mean, this is a sport that I've seen a lot of, let's say, cross club assistance, because it's a fun sport, and even if your club's not necessarily putting it on, you kind of help each other out, as you're kind of going through it. I kind of mentioned with the secretarial services, it's good, to have a mentor the first times, or so that you're going through it, if you decide to take it on. And then, again, I'll keep stressing, like, ribbons. There's ribbons are one of the attractions to the sport. So the dog loves it, and the owner gets ribbons. So trying to come up with things that are unique, that kind of help, make you stand out, really makes to a successful event. Training tips. Yeah, I mean, there are those that, that will kind of introduce, the dog to a lure, put it on the end of a line, and just kind of play around and so forth. And that definitely does help. I mean, what'll happen a lot of times is, new dogs, they're not really sure what's going on. Even if they're a breed, or even if they are maybe prey driven, it's not like they're used to being just let loose, and run down a line away from one person they may not know, and then hopefully find the person they know at the other end. So there's different things that you kind of do until all of a sudden, I'll say, the light bulb comes on, or maybe it never comes on. But you really just try to really gauge their interest, and then, how prey driven are they. Again, the lure, is quite frequently a plastic bag. But we can also attach, a squawker to it, which can either make noise or not. People have now really started then moving to even attaching, pelts. Not all lure operators can do that, and not all dogs really care. But it's one of those little things that you can do to try to get the dog interest, and until they can figure out, it's like, oh, this is a fun game, kind of going through. The other thing that we really encourage, in terms of introduction and training, if you will, are our fun runs. That even if we have an event, and even the larger events, we try to fit fun runs in, because I'll go back to the dog park example. It's like, I don't know what my dog's going to do. Even if I do have I really want to see what it's like. And so what we do is, you just have them, okay, just give it a try. With a fun run, you can walk down the middle of the run, so that the dog can see, where their owner is going, the person they're really attracted to. Or you can even have the owner just kind of go, halfway down the run, so to at least get them encouraged in terms of, hey, this is a good thing, and then see how they go. A lot are naturals, others are not, but we more frequently, what we'll see is that, a fun run then turns into real runs because the owner sees just how excited the dog is and how well the dog does, and it kind of goes from there. So again, that's where we really try to see how we can try to fit in fun runs. So again, quite frequently we're asked, when should a dog be released? Um, and what we stress with the releaser is you definitely don't do it before the lure starts moving. And what the hunt master will do is as soon as the lure starts moving, they say tally ho. And you can listen for the T and tally ho and let them go, or you can hold them back if you want the lure to get out a little bit further ahead before you let them go. But just don't do it before the lure starts moving and the hunt master says tally ho. Type of collars, it specifically you cannot have a choker or a prong collar. You really shouldn't have that for an AKC event, or same thing, electronic training collars. One of the frequent questions I get is whether or not you can have tags hanging. That's really up to the event committee. And a lot of times what we'll do is just encourage, hey, you can strap them, or put some tape, on there. But you don't necessarily need to. They can go ahead and run with tags. It's just like anything else. The exhibitor, has to know that, okay, there's a bit of a slighter risk to that. It could get caught up and so forth. But and then kind of hit on this whole thing with the releasers before, whether or not you're going to have releasers. Again, it's a team sport. And I really try to encourage is like, hey, bring or make a friend, because you can't necessarily count on clubs having people just to release. So, and help out, because what will happen is that, you may need some help. Find somebody to help release your dog, and then when you're done, put them away and kind of help somebody else, for a little bit. It's just it's a nice fun thing to do with everyone else and so forth. And don't forget that when somebody catches, they really need a lead. So just reminders. So that's kind of like the end of what I had. That's why I really want to spend some time. I can go back to a slide as well. Really want to spend some time on questions and answers.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeff. That was awesome. And the presentation's got a lot of beautiful photos and a lot of cute photos too. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I didn't have any Great Danes.
Yeah, right. We'll have to fix it. We can fix that. We'll get
you can tell what breeds I have.
Yeah. I have several questions, but I want to open it up to other people. What questions do we have, or do we have specific questions for the club? And I see a few of us have joined here that have done it before too. It'd be great to hear from people that have done it, or maybe if you guys have seen clubs develop this new to other clubs, that would be great to hear about. Maybe like the first time you saw your club do it as a fast cat. That'd be awesome.
I have a quick question, really quick. You mentioned fun runs earlier, and I was looking on the website while this meeting was going on. I didn't see any there. But for a fun run, does the dog need to be registered in order to attend that?
I can
No.
step in. I would say I can step in here. No, for a fun run, it's a totally unregulated. It's not an AKC event, so fun runs do not require any form of registration. They also they don't have to, there's certain things in the regulations that you can't do for a real run, like running down the middle of the track in front of your dog. but you are absolutely welcome to do those kind of things in a fun run. And I would say that Fast Cat is kind of unique amongst dog sports because there are many events that you don't really do FEO or for exhibition, or, you don't do fun runs in agility. You don't do them in scent work. This is unique that you can put them anywhere in your event as long as you're not really disrupting the flow of the event. And oftentimes you can convert those fun runs into paid runs if the dogs are able to be successful with their owners. So, but nope, there's no registration requirements at all for fun runs.
Awesome, thank you.
I wanted to ask, I love, so I have a lot of different, I keep a lot of different animals, right? And each tribe or each group of people that are kind of into like birds or snakes or fish, right? We all have kind of our own psychology, if you will. And what I love about dogs and dog owners is like, Jeff, you were talking about when the dog gets it, right? That's something I never have with my snakes. The snake don't get it, right? But I love like how they learn. I was wondering if you had any funny stories of like where the dog, I'm assuming like this happens quite often where the dog clearly doesn't get it, and then after a few runs they do, and what that's like.
Actually, I
Yeah,
have a
Mark.
really good personal
Yeah, go
story
for
on
it.
this one. My very first sport dog was an Irish red and white setter, and she did not get the thing. She did not get the thing. She had no interest in the thing. And we worked really hard we actually did a bunch of fun runs. And initially she kind of turned into like, oh, hey, look, I know that lady who's down there in the catch pen. Oh, that makes sense. So she started out doing really a 100-yard recall. And it took a while, but inevitably she decided she actually didn't care about me in the catch pen anymore. She was like, "Ooh, that's the lure, and I really, really like that." But there's a lot of dogs who struggle at first to do it. We've had there's a little Westie who had started, and they had tried and tried and tried and tried and tried, and I'm like, okay, so we can just break this down. You could start by doing a 20-yard recall. And then with another fun run, you can do a 50-yard recall. And then with another fun run, you could do 70 yards. And inevitably, that dog also got it and ended up placing in the rankings for an invite down to go to invitationals. It just took that dog some time to figure out what the assignment was. And then once you got it, you got it.
In the same vein, a lot of these events are kind of comical to me, like because you get to see these personalities of these dogs. Have you ever seen a dog like that was really slow? Like at some point, it's a judgment. Are they actually like running? Are they following it? I don't know what like some of the slowest times that were clearly the dog was like trying and it's an official run, but what are some of the slowest times you've ever seen?
I recently went to an event that had two field spaniels running, and most field spaniels who run, once they get it, and they do wonderful things. And I watched the first field spaniel go, and I was like, wow, that is a really fast field spaniel. And I walked up to its owner. I'm like, wow, that's a really nice running fieldy. And she's like, you should watch her mother. I'm like, all right, I'll watch her mother. I am not joking when I tell you that that dog lumbered as slowly as because she never worried. She never stopped, didn't sniff. She just barely trot, kind of loped the whole way down. I They're like, it takes her forever to get her titles, but she enjoys it. She just does it at her own pace. And her daughter is like the second fastest in the country. And then there's her. I don't get it, but that is the way it works. So yes, there are some dogs who truly just aren't gifted with speed. They just move at their own pace. And as long as they're continuing to move, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. This definitely is an exhibitor sport. because we have a lot of exhibitors that just kind of like, I'm just going to pull up my chair and we're just going to watch the dogs go by. And just the personalities, some breeds get it, some don't. Some, poodles are great, standard poodles. Some really go after it. Others like, yeah, I'm out here looking pretty, and I'm gonna lope all the way down for my Sunday afternoon, lope.
Actually, I think one of the funniest things I've ever watched talking about dog personalities was watching a baby whippet do fast cat for the first time. It was literally the first time in that dog's life that it had ever been given the ability to just run. And its legs went a million miles an hour, but it was just very slow compared to most whippets. But the dog was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my legs. I'm just moving really, really fast. And then the second run, it was like his brain clicked that if he actually extended his gait, he could go really fast in a straight line. And then all of a sudden, he went from running like 10 seconds, which for a whippet who is trying is very slow, to, 7.5 or 7 seconds. So he just had this tremendous improvement. But it was the funniest thing I've ever seen watching this little sight hound try his hardest and just go nowhere because his legs were going in all the different directions.
Yeah, he developed his technique on the fly. I loved how, Jeff, you talked about the history too of this. I've seen the setup for this. Have you ever had actual wildlife get in the pen, and did that create any problems? I mean, we talk about safety for other dogs. How many dogs are released in the pen setup, but have you ever seen like an actual rabbit or squirrel somehow get in?
Do you remember the chipmunks, Jeff?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, why don't you go ahead and tell that one?
So we were in Amana, Iowa once, and the Amana RV park is inundated with chipmunks. And I mean, it was so bad that every single time there was any amount of a break, you had to walk the track and repack the holes because you would watch the little chipmunks digging out the holes that you had just packed in. And they inevitably realized that we were going to keep packing their holes while we were there. So they'd sit on the outside of the fence and watch the dogs running past. And then, we'd break down for lunch and you'd come back and they will have diligently cleared out all the holes you just packed in and you pack them down again. And you could always tell when they were excavating them because you just see these little tufts of dirt and you'd see that and have to stop and pack it. But there was no place on that whole property that there was not chipmunks that were excavating the world. But every now and then there is some wildlife interactions. Ducks, if you're running next to a pond, that could be a hard one for some of your sporting breeds. I've not seen a rabbit try to do anything silly, but every now and then it happens.
Well, but I guess this goes back to the comment on the venue, because we have another venue that has similar where you've got chipmunk holes and so forth. And in this case, it was an Irish Terrier that saw a chipmunk go into the hole outside the run and then got under the fence and went to ground after the chipmunk. So it does happen. We try to avoid that kind of stuff, but it does happen.
That's funny. Was there one last question? We're at 8:05. I'm gonna, I'd like if there's any more questions, we could ask another question. I'm gonna probably stop the recording for now. And I had a couple follow-up questions after that. But did anyone have any other questions tonight?
If I want to videotape my dog, are there spots that you aren't supposed to stand to videotape, or are you not supposed to be along the sides? Is that distracting?
Yeah, we usually, if people are videotaping, what they usually will do is they'll videotape from within the run. So at the end, we try to your point, not to encourage videotaping alongside the run because dogs will get distracted. But if you're in the run, you just have to be careful because if you have some breeds that are very fast and don't stop well, you just don't want to be taken out by your dog.
And always when you're in the catch pen, whether you're just catching your dog or you are videoing, oftentimes when you're videoing, you're kind of more focused into your camera than what's going on situationally around you. Just making sure that you're not accidentally standing on the lure line, because in some cases it will wear a hole in your shoe. In some cases, it'll just stop the lure, depending on how fast your dog is that's going, and that can be detrimental to the run itself. So just always being cognizant of all of the lines that you encounter, knowing that you do not want to touch them when they're moving.
If the lure does stop and the dog gets it, I guess you just go back to the beginning and they go again.
Yeah, if the dog catches the lure, then that's it's the hunt master's call, but that is results in a rerun.
Okay. Well, on behalf of the Illini Great Dane Club, I just wanted to say thank you so much. Again, this was Jeff Dart from Fast and Fun Dogs, the lure operating service. And Morgan, I'm glad that you were able to join us too. You're the AKC field director for coursing ability tests and Fast Cat. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now and then open it up to any more remaining questions.